My ex-wife knocked on my door at 11 p.m., and the moment I opened it, 3 years of silence came crashing back. Because the woman I divorced was standing on my step in the rain, shaking, after fighting with her husband. I hadn't seen Grace since the day we split without a single scream, just two exhausted people who'd stopped seeing each other in the dark. But tonight she wasn't the composed woman who shook my hand at the lawyer's office. She was trembling, her knuckles white around her car keys, mascara smudged like she'd been crying for miles. "The fight was about you," she whispered. "It's always been about you. I'm David. 3 years ago I let this woman walk out my door because I loved her too much to be her burden. And I've kept her ugly green coffee mug on my shelf ever since, unable to throw it away, unable to use it. She married Daniel 18 months after our divorce was final. A good man, a steady man, the kind of man who should have made her forget me completely. But now she was standing at my door at 11 p.m., married to someone else, telling me the fight had always been about me. For a second I couldn't move. I just held the door and stared at her, and the rain kept falling behind her in thin silver lines, catching the porch light. Grace. Her name felt strange in my mouth. I hadn't said it out loud in a long time. "What are you doing here?" "I don't know." She laughed, but it cracked in the middle and came apart. "I drove around your block 4 times. I told myself I'd turn around. I got to the end of your street twice, and I couldn't do it. You're soaked. Come inside." "No." She stepped back, like the doorway might swallow her. "If I come in, I'll say things I can't take back." The wind pushed a strand of wet hair across her face, and she didn't fix it. That's how I knew something was really wrong. The Grace I married never let a single thing be out of place. She was the one who kept our whole world stitched together. She was always fixing, always noticing, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. And now she was standing on my step, coming apart, and not fixing a thing. "What happened with Daniel?" I asked. She flinched at his name. "We had a fight," she said. "The worst one, and in the middle of it, he stopped yelling. He got very quiet, and he looked at me across the kitchen table and he said," her voice dropped to almost nothing. He said, "You've been married to me for 3 years, but you never actually left him, did you?" The rain filled the silence. "And I couldn't lie," she whispered. "I opened my mouth to tell him he was wrong, David. And nothing came out. My heart was slamming so hard I thought she could hear it. I should tell you something before this goes any further. When people find out Grace and I got divorced, they always assume the worst. They assume one of us did something ugly. They lean in and lower their voices and ask what really happened, like there's a secret villain hiding in the story. There isn't. That's the part nobody believes. Nobody cheated. Nobody screamed. Nobody threw a plate against the wall. There was no big terrible night that everyone could point to and say, "There, that's the moment it broke." That's what made it so hard to explain, and so much harder to survive. Because how do you tell people your marriage died of something they can't even see? Grace and I got married at 24. We were broke and we were happy, and back then those two things went together. We had a tiny apartment with a radiator that banged like someone was trapped inside it, and we thought that was funny. We split 1 order of fries on the fire escape, because that's what we could afford, and we argued about movies, and we were the kind of in love where you don't notice time passing. And then time passed anyway, the way it always does. We got a house. We had our daughter Lily. And somewhere in there, without either of us deciding it, Grace became the person who held everything up. I didn't see it. That's the truth I have to live with. I didn't see it, because it was invisible, even to me, and I was standing right next to it. I went to work. I came home. I mowed the lawn on Saturdays, and I fixed the leaky faucet when it finally got bad enough. And I honestly, truly believed I was pulling my weight. I thought a marriage was 2 people each carrying half. But Grace wasn't carrying half. She was carrying almost all of it. And the heaviest part of what she carried was the part you couldn't see at all. Let me try to make you feel it, the way I eventually did. Too late. Grace was the one who knew Lily's shoe size, and when it changed. She was the one who knew that the pediatrician appointment was on the 11th, and that the form was due before it, and that the form needed a signature, and that we were almost out of the cereal Lily would actually eat, and that my mother's birthday was Thursday, and that the car was due for an oil change, and that Lily had a friend whose name we had to remember, or there'd be tears. She kept a whole invisible world spinning in her head, every single day, and she never got to put it down. I never had to remember any of it, because she remembered it for both of us. And here's the cruel trick of it, because she did it so well, I never even knew it was being done. When you carry the weight and nobody sees it, you start to feel invisible too. Do you remember? Grace said suddenly, still standing in the rain. The night everything ended? Every second of it, I said quietly. You told everyone it was mutual. It was mutual. No. She shook her head slowly. It only looked mutual because I was too tired to fight for it. There's a difference, David. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I disappeared, and you didn't notice I was gone. That one went straight through me, because she was right. And on the night she was talking about, I hadn't understood a single thing that was happening. I remember it was late. Lily was finally asleep. I was on the couch, half watching something, and I said the sentence that I've replayed 10,000 times since. I said, "You seem stressed lately. You should relax more." I thought I was being kind. I swear to you, I thought I was being a good husband, noticing that my wife was tired and gently telling her to take it easy. Grace put down the laundry she was folding at 11 at night, because that was the only time there was to fold it, and she looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. Anger I could have handled. It was worse. It was empty. "Relax," she repeated, like the word was a stone in her mouth. "Yeah," I said, not getting it. "You do too much. Just let some of it go." "Let some of it go," she said. "Okay. Which part, David? Should I let Lily's medicine go? Should I forget your mother's birthday and let her think you don't love her? Should I stop buying the food, or paying the bills on time, or knowing when the tags on the car expire? Tell me which part I get to drop. Tell me which one you'll catch." And I didn't have an answer. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. The same thing that had happened to her tonight at Daniel's table, 3 years later. Funny how that works. How the same silence can end 2 different marriages. "That's what I thought," she said softly, and she went back to folding the laundry. That was the night our marriage died. Not with a scream, with a basket of laundry at 11 o'clock at night, and a husband who told his drowning wife to relax. But even then, I didn't understand. That's the part that haunts me. It took me months after she left to even begin to see the shape of what I'd missed. I kept thinking, we were fine. We never even fought. What happened? And the answer was, nothing happened, and nothing happening was the whole disease. She had asked me for help 100 times in 100 silent ways, and I had answered every single one of them by not noticing. "Grace," I said now, my voice breaking, "why are you telling me this tonight?" She looked up at me, and the rain had soaked through her thin coat, and she was shivering, and she said the thing that stopped my heart. "Because tonight, Daniel said the exact same thing to me that you said. Word for word." She was crying now, openly, not hiding it. "He looked at me and he told me I do too much and I should relax. And David, I broke, right there at the table. I broke into 1,000 pieces, because I finally understood something I've spent 3 years running from." "What?" I could barely get the word out. "What did you understand?" She wrapped her arms around herself. "That I didn't marry a different man," she whispered. "I married the same silence. I ran from you into someone who couldn't see me either. And when Daniel said those words, all I could think about was you, and the laundry, and the night I disappeared. And I realized the fight in that kitchen was never really about Daniel at all." She looked me dead in the eyes. "It was about us. It's always been about us. It's always been about you." And then, before I could say a single word, her phone lit up in her shaking hand. The screen glowed against the dark. I watched her face go pale as she read the name. It was Daniel. She stared at it. The phone buzzed and buzzed in her trembling fingers, and the rain came down harder, and neither of us moved. "Grace," I said, "you have to answer that." She looked up at me, terrified, soaked, standing on the doorstep of the man she'd divorced, and she asked me the one question I wasn't ready for. "David," she said, "if I answer this phone, what am I supposed to tell him?" She didn't answer it. The phone buzzed one last time and went dark, and the silence after felt louder than the ringing. Grace stared at the black screen in her hand like it might light up again and make the choice for her. Then she slid it into her coat pocket, and I watched something shift in her face, like she'd just stepped off a ledge, and there was no climbing back up now. "Come inside," I said again, softer this time. "You're shaking. Please. You don't have to say anything. Just get out of the rain." For a long moment she didn't move. Then she stepped over the threshold, into my house, and the door clicked shut behind her, and just like that the rain was on the other side of the world. She stood dripping on my floor, looking around, and I saw her taking it all in. The small life I'd built without her, the couch that was too big for one person, the one plate drying by the sink, the quiet. And then her eyes stopped. They stopped on the shelf above the kitchen counter, on the ugly green coffee mug sitting there, right where I could see it every single morning. Her mug, the one she'd left behind 3 years ago. She went completely still. "You kept it," she whispered. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. She walked to the shelf slowly, like she was afraid it might disappear, and she reached up and touched it with one finger, just one finger, on the rim of that chipped ugly mug she used to drink her coffee out of, every morning of our marriage. "I looked for this," she said, her voice trembling. "After I moved out, I turned 3 boxes upside down. I cried over a coffee mug in the middle of my new apartment, and I couldn't even explain to myself why." She turned to look at me. "It was here the whole time." "I couldn't throw it away," I said. My throat was so tight the words barely made it out. "I moved twice. I packed it both times. I've never once used it, Grace. I couldn't. Drinking out of it felt like admitting you were really gone. And throwing it away felt like—" I stopped. "Like what?" she whispered. "Like giving up on the only proof I had that we were ever real." She put her hand over her mouth, and the tears came, and this time she didn't fight them. Let me tell you what those 3 years had actually been like, because the mug is only half the story. After Grace left, everyone told me I handled it beautifully. That's the word they used. Beautifully. Like grief was a performance, and I'd nailed the part. I got the promotion I'd been chasing. I kept the house clean. I showed up to Lily's recitals with a smile and a folding chair, and I nodded politely at Grace across the auditorium. And everyone said, "Look how well they co-parent. Look how mature. Look how fine." But here's what nobody saw. Nobody saw me standing in the cereal aisle of the grocery store, completely frozen, because I didn't know which cereal Lily actually ate. Grace had always known. I bought 4 boxes just to be safe, and 3 of them went stale in the cabinet, and I sat on the kitchen floor and I understood, really understood, for the first time, how many invisible things my wife had carried while I told her to relax. Nobody saw me miss my own mother's birthday that first year, because Grace wasn't there to remember it for me. My mom called, hurt and quiet, and said, "It's okay, honey. I know you're busy." And I had to sit with the fact that for years, every card my mother got that felt like it came from me had actually come from Grace. I had spent our whole marriage believing I was carrying half. It took losing her to find out I'd barely been carrying anything at all. And the worst part, the part that kept me up at night, was that she never made me feel it. She never rubbed my face in it. She just did it, silently, year after year, and asked for so little, and got so little, and finally just ran out. Grace turned away from the mug and looked at me, and her face had changed. The panic was gone. Something quieter and much more frightening had taken its place. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "And I need the truth, even if it hurts." "Anything." When I left, she swallowed hard. "Were you relieved?" "No," I said instantly. "Let me finish." Her voice shook. "I've spent 3 years telling myself a story. David, I told myself that you let me go so easily because some part of you wanted me gone, that I was a burden, that when I walked out that door and you didn't chase me, it was because you were finally free of all my nagging and my lists and my exhausting, invisible, never-ending." Her voice broke completely. "Please, I need to know. Did you not chase me because you didn't want me? Or because—" Because I thought you deserved better than a man who had to be told to see you." The words came out before I could stop them, and once they were out, the rest came pouring after. "Grace, I didn't chase you because I was ashamed. Do you understand? The night you asked me which part you should drop, the medicine, my mother's birthday, the bills, I didn't have an answer, and that answer, the empty one, told me everything about the kind of husband I'd been. You'd been drowning for years right in front of me, and I told you to relax. How was I supposed to chase you after that? What was I going to say? Come back so I can keep not seeing you." I was crying now too. Two grown adults standing in a kitchen at midnight, 3 years too late. "I let you go because I thought letting you go was the one kind thing I had left to give you," I said. "I thought you'd be lighter without me. And it turns out I was wrong about that too, because I have been anything but lighter without you. I have been a man walking around a house full of things I never learned to carry." Grace made a sound I'll never forget, half a sob, half a laugh, the sound of 3 years of a story unraveling all at once. "We're so stupid," she whispered. "We loved each other the whole time. Do you know what that does to a person? To find out the thing that broke you wasn't hate. It was just silence. Two people too proud and too tired to say the one true sentence." "What sentence?" I asked. She looked at me. "I see you," she said. "That's all I ever wanted. 3 words, not roses, not vacations, just, I see everything you carry, and I'm going to help you carry it. That's it. That's the whole thing I was dying for." And I stood there, and I realized she was right. It really had been that simple. And that simple thing had been more than I knew how to give her, until I lost her and had to learn it alone, the hard way, in a cereal aisle, on a kitchen floor, in front of an ugly green mug. Then Grace's phone buzzed again. Not a call this time, a text. She pulled it out, and I watched her read it, and I watched every drop of color drain from her face. "What is it?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just slowly turned the phone around so I could see the screen. It was Daniel, and the message said, "I know where you are. I found the mug thing on your old laptop. The searches. You never threw away the marriage, Grace. You just paused it. I'm not angry, but I think you need to hear the whole truth about why I married you. Before you make a decision you can't undo. Ask David about the night of the divorce. Ask him who called me first." The phone trembled in her hand. "David," she whispered, and her voice had gone very small and very cold. "What does he mean, who called him first?" And my heart stopped. Because there was something I had never told her. Something about the night our marriage ended. Something I had buried so deep for 3 years that I'd almost convinced myself it never happened. "Grace," I said slowly, "sit down. There's something I should have told you a long time ago." She sat down at my kitchen table, the same kind of table where 2 different marriages had cracked open, and she put the phone face down, like she couldn't stand to look at it anymore. "Tell me," she said, "whatever it is. No more silence. We already know what silence costs." So I told her. "The night you left," I began. "After you drove away, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of Lily's room, and I watched her breathe, and I felt like the worst man alive. Because I finally saw it, Grace. All of it. Everything you'd carried. It hit me all at once, like a wave, and I couldn't stand up under it." She was very still. "And somewhere around 3 in the morning, I did something I've never told a living soul. My hands were shaking. I called Daniel." Her lips parted. "You, what? He wasn't your husband then. He was just a guy from my office. A good guy. The steady kind. The kind who remembered people's birthdays without being reminded. Who showed up early. Who noticed things." I swallowed. "The kind of man I wasn't. And I called him at 3 in the morning, and I was crying, and I said something I'll regret and be grateful for until the day I die." "What did you say?" she whispered. I said, "Grace is the best person I've ever known," and I failed her. I let her carry everything alone until she broke. She deserves someone who sees her. And then I asked him, my voice cracked. I asked him to look out for you, to be the man I couldn't be. I didn't mean marry you, Grace. I swear I didn't. I just couldn't stand the thought of you out there in the world, still carrying everything, with nobody watching to catch you." Grace put both hands over her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. "That's why he came into your life," I said. "Not to steal you, because a broken man begged him to make sure you were never invisible again." For a long time she couldn't speak. The rain had softened to a whisper against the windows. Somewhere a clock ticked. "All this time," she finally said, "I thought I ran from you into a stranger's arms. And you're telling me you're the one who put him there. To protect me. I thought it was the last good thing I could do for you," I said. "Love you enough to hand you to someone better." And then she did something that undid me completely. She laughed. A real laugh. Wet and broken and beautiful. And she said, "You idiot. You beautiful, blind, wonderful idiot. Don't you understand? There was never a better man. There was just a man who could see me. And you finally learned to see me at 3 in the morning on the floor of our daughter's room. You just did it too late to tell me." She reached across the table and took the phone and turned it back over, and she called Daniel. I stood up to give her privacy, but she caught my wrist. "No," she said. "Stay. No more secrets in this room." She put it on speaker. He answered on the first ring. "Grace." "Daniel." Her voice trembled. "I got your message." There was a long pause, and when Daniel spoke, his voice was not angry. It was the voice of a genuinely good man, doing the hardest, most decent thing of his life. "I married you because a heartbroken man called me at 3 in the morning and told me you were the best person he'd ever known," Daniel said quietly. "And he was right. You are. Every day I've been married to you, I've known your heart was somewhere else. I told myself I could love you enough for both of us. But tonight, when I said those words, 'You should relax,' and I watched your whole face fall apart, I finally understood. You don't need a man who loves you enough for both of you, Grace. You need a man who sees you, and I've spent 3 years learning that I'm not that man either. He is. He always was. He just had to lose you to become him." Grace was sobbing now, and so was I, and I don't think either of us was ashamed of it. "I'm not calling to fight for you," Daniel said, and his voice broke just a little, the sound of a good man setting down something heavy. "I'm calling to let you go. Kindly, the way somebody should have let you go a long time ago, so you could finally be happy. Be happy, Grace. You've earned it more than anyone I've ever met." And then, softer, "David, you still there?" "I'm here," I managed. "Take care of her this time. Take care of her this time. See her. Every single day. The invisible things too. Especially the invisible things." "I will," I said. "I swear to you, I will." The line went quiet, and then it went dead, and Grace set the phone down on the table with both hands, like it was something holy. For a while neither of us said anything. There was nothing left to say that hadn't finally been said. Then Grace stood up. She walked to the shelf. She reached up and took down the ugly green mug, her mug, and she carried it to the sink and rinsed off 3 years of dust. And she filled the kettle, and she made 2 cups of tea at 1 o'clock in the morning, and she handed me one in a plain white mug and kept the green one for herself. "We're going to use them this time," she said. "Both of them. Every morning." And we did. I won't tell you it was easy after that. Real love, the kind that lasts, isn't a knock on a door at 11 p.m. That's just the beginning. The real love came in the mornings after. It came the first time I looked at the calendar without being asked and said, "Lily's dentist is on the 9th. I already booked the day off." It came the night I said, "You sit down, I've got the laundry." And I actually knew where the laundry went. It came in 1,000 small, invisible, unglamorous moments where I finally carried my half. And then some. Because I'd learned the lesson the hardest way there is. I'd learned that love isn't the big romantic gesture. Love is noticing. Love is the mental list you carry so the person you love can put theirs down. Love is 3 quiet words, said and meant. Every single day, "I see you." We remarried the next spring. Same 2 people, same ugly green mug on the counter, except now there are 2 of them, chipped and mismatched, used every single morning while we plan the day together, both of us, out loud, sharing the weight. Lily was our flower girl. She's the one who caught Grace crying at the sink one morning months later. happy tears, and asked, "Mommy, why are you crying?" And Grace pulled her close and said, "Because your daddy finally learned to see me. And that's the whole secret, baby. Never marry someone who loves you. Marry someone who sees you." Daniel sent a card, just a few words inside. "I'm glad she's finally home. D." And I framed it, right next to that ugly green mug, because a good man's kindness deserves to be seen too. Sometimes the person who breaks your heart and the person who mends it are the very same person. Sometimes love doesn't die, it just waits, quietly, in a coffee mug on a shelf, for two people to finally learn how to say the truth. Grace knocked on my door at 11 p.m. after a fight with her husband, and she was right about what she told me on that step. In the rain, 3 years too late, and right on time. The fight was about me. It had always been about us. And it took losing everything to finally see everything. So let me ask you something, before you go. And be honest with yourself, because nobody's watching but you. In your own life, right now, is there someone carrying the invisible weight? Someone doing the remembering, the planning, the worrying, the 1,000 quiet things nobody thanks them for? Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's your mother. Maybe, and this is the hard one, maybe it's you, and you've been waiting years for one person to simply notice. Who in your life needs to hear the words, "I see you" tonight? And what's stopping you from saying it before it's too late? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Your answer might be the thing that saves someone else's marriage. And if this story moved you, if it made you think of someone or hold someone a little tighter, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. Because the next one might be the one you needed most. Don't wait 3 years and a coffee mug to say the words. Say them tonight. I see you. Thank you for watching.